talking about adrenal health and the COVID virus 19. So my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja. Today I want to talk to you about the relationship between the COVID-19 and adrenal health. So I'm not here to talk to you about specific challenges with the virus, but wait me out, let me speak what I'm going to say. I'm here to talk about how you're coming into the viral epidemic or pandemic, as it's coined, in terms of your adrenal health now and how that may make you more susceptible. So I'm going to talk to you about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about the basics, because I think when we're exhausted and burnt out and fearful and can't focus, can't concentrate, don't have energy, don't handle our stressors very well, don't have great libido, don't have a lot of motivation or drive, have a broken circadian rhythm, so you're more tired in the morning, you get your energy at night, you're not sleeping very well, you're not staying asleep, waking up regenerated and recharged, and now this, and now this. And it's overwhelming, right? And if you needed to do something about your health before this, you specifically need to do something about your health now so that you maintain a lot of great homeostatic or homeostatic abilities to regulate your body and support your immune system, support your energy production, support your hormone balance, support your detox pathways, because that's what it really comes down to, is having enough energy so that your body is able to maintain homeostasis. And that's why I want to talk to you about the basics, right? Because potentially you want to go get tested. And I think there's some really good information that's being put out there if you don't stay glued to your TV and get more and more stressed. But something that I heard is that a lot of people that were tested that thought they had the illness, I made me think less than 10%, 1 in 10 actually have the illness. So don't go get tested if you don't have any symptoms, is what I'm hearing. But what I again want to talk to you about is your resiliency, your reserves, your capacity going into this. How can you maximize that? If going into this you were already stressed, you were already fatigued, you were already dealing with all of those things. So let me sort of paint a scenario with what I hear a lot of on a daily basis. I have adrenal fatigue. I did a saliva test. My saliva test showed that I'm low across the board, or I'm low at night, or I'm high in the morning. Whatever it may be, you're making judgments on the basis of a saliva test. Or you know that you've done a lot of research and you're looking into this and doctors are telling you that there's nothing really going on. I mean, there are some positive things, like maybe your vitamin D is very low, or you have low white blood cells, or you've had a past Epstein-Barr virus that we're not concerned about right now. But aside from those things, everything's okay, don't worry about it. I hear a lot of that. And then they tell me, well, I've done some research, I've looked into the adrenals. I know there's a lot of controversy with adrenal fatigue, but I've looked into all of that and I know it fits me like a glove, and that's what I'm dealing with. And I would say you're right, that you do have the impact of stress and the multifaceted stressors that we get exposed to on a daily basis that accumulate over time, that impact your body's ability to regulate your stress response. But as far as being completely fatigued and not spitting out any cortisol, A, that's not happening unless you have an adrenal insufficiency. B, even if those things are happening and your HPA axis is firing off and being depleted, or having dysregulation, or just not functioning at its fullest, there's more going on beneath the surface. And that's why I want to talk to you about some of these basics, because don't think that it's just an adrenal fatigue problem that you can look at with a saliva test and say, okay, I got to take these adrenal fatigue supplements like licorice root or rhodiola or ashwagandha, or even look at taking prednisone or hydrocortisone, because I talk to a lot of you people as well. And I want to let you know, although you may have an autoimmunity and your gland isn't producing at the level that it should be, you have a multitude of other variables that are impacting your homeostasis. And that could be inflammation and other reasons, parasitic infections, other viral infections, chemical exposures, heavy metals, physical traumas. It really requires looking at the whole package. So what I want to do is I want to talk to you about number one, the stress basis is how do we respond and what happens? So ultimately, one of the greatest things that I'm seeing is by David Sinclair, and he's talking about how aging is really a discommunication. Aging is a discommunication. And that's what happens ultimately is we have the stress theory model of when we get under stress, we have to process that, and then we have to return to baseline. And there's a lot of communicating that takes place. There's, hey, mobilize the troops. Hey, make some hormones. Hey, detoxify or shunt blood away from one area to the other area. Make more immune cells. Decrease blood flow over here. Whatever it may be. And then that should be turned on and turned off effectively. And I think that the old Hans Selye model of the alarm, the resistance, and the exhaustion phase is outdated. It's just plain and simply outdated. We have better models to explain that now, and it comes down to a cell danger response. And there's different parts of that cell danger, but suffice it to say, what happens is your body goes on alert mode. So like you're going on alert mode, like when you have these stressors, you're not allowed to go to work, or your business is closed. So now you're at home and potentially you're trying to figure out, what can I do to best serve my time? I need to have more income coming in. So I got to figure that out. I got to call people. I got to fill out applications. I got to follow up on this, that, or the other. You go into consequence mode, which is basically as a result of the stressor, your body goes into that consequence to be able to deal with it and come out of it quickly and effectively. And that should happen normally. That's how we respond to stress. There's a disruption in our pattern, and then there's a priority or a hierarchical way of dealing with that. And our body is engineered to maintain homeostasis. We're meant to, when we bend, we come back. That's what our body does. We have this inherent ability to do that. And the better resilient you are, the better health you have, the more you're able to deal with a viral exposure or financial strain or relationship woes or physical traumas. But when your body loses its ability to maintain homeostasis, that's where problems develop. And again, these are stress basics. I mean, this is like you're in high school learning again, and you're learning the updated model of the stress theory. And if you understand these basics, you have a lot more power going into taking control of your health. Two things that we look at, or another word I want you to know in terms of stress basics is called allostasis. So homeostasis is the body's inborn ability to maintain an optimal environment so that your blood pressure, your heart rate, your temperature, your oxygenation, your pulse, a lot of those things, your respiratory rate, the basics stay normal. But allostasis is how it's achieved, what's happening through the communication. And when there's a disruption in that communication, it's going to push your allostatic load. And when you have an overload of your allostasis properties, you're going to have a decrease in performance, and you're going to have a decrease in health. And you're going to be much more likely to, if you get exposed to a virus, to get sick, to have a respiratory issue. So, and the good news is that a lot has to go wrong. I mean, the analogy I always use is the body is amazing at maintaining homeostasis and being able to set up tributaries or other contingencies for you to deal with the stressor. An example that I've used a lot of the time is, unfortunately, that person who goes and exercises with the New Year's resolutions and they haven't exercised for a long time. They have 85% blockage in their heart, in their coronary arteries, and doing their low activity day in, day out doesn't overcome the stress that they need to cause the straw to break, so to speak. But when they go and exercise and they do too much, they increase the demand of the available supply, and that's where someone has a heart attack. So a lot of things have to go wrong for your body to get into allostatic overload. And we'll talk about some of those factors. So that's the good news. But the bad news is that repetitively over and over and over again, from stress, from inflammation, from physical trauma, from chemical exposures to crappy diets, your allostatic load is being pushed to the max. And that's why you're not doing really well before this outbreak even happened. And now you're even more concerned because you've been pushing that allostatic load pretty hard. Two terms that we think about in the basics of stress when it comes to your allostatic load is, number one, your capacity. How much do you have to be able to deal with before you get into overload? And then the other one is reserves. How much back do you have? Those two really, really important concepts. And what I like to talk about is a term called metabolic flexibility. So metabolic flexibility means that the more flexible you are, the better health that you have, the more you're able to deal with stress and viruses and immune compromise, because your allostatic load is not being overloaded. You're able to maintain a tightly regulated system and you feel healthy. And that's really the goal. That's what you should be looking to do. That's what I tell my clients that I talk to is, look, this is not a good thing. I'll agree with you, but this is a wake-up call. This is a wake-up call for you to take control of your health, and for you to take control of your surroundings. A great book called Who Moved My Cheese, where these mice get too used to their station where there's a lot of cheese and it's kind of given to them, but then one day they blink, they close their eyes and they open it again and the cheese is gone. It's like, hey, this is no fair. And their mouth names are hem and haw, and they're hemming and hawing about why it's no fair. This is not fair. They moved it. They didn't tell us. Maybe we should write a letter to the government. Maybe we should, just sit on our butts and not take our cheese back. And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about getting your health back because it wasn't there before this. And you are fearful that if you're not careful, you can contract the virus. And again, I don't say this stuff to scare you. In fact, I feel that the virus isn't very virulent if you're not immunocompromised, or your metabolic reserves and your metabolic capacity and your allostatic load isn't being overstressed. Hopefully that made a lot of sense. And again, you're not going to get that from saliva tests, or you're not going to get that from someone telling you that your blood tests are normal. There's a lot of things that you need to do to be able to increase your reserves, increase your capacity, and ultimately increase your metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility is a great term. The way I look at it is it's your stress divided by your glucose. That's if we were to put it into a formula. So stress is based on your heart rate variability. The lower your heart rate variability, the more stressed you are. And just to explain what that means is heart rate variability is the cadence, the beats between the beats. So if you're under adrenaline, tightly wound, sympathetically overdriven, allostatic load compromised, your HRV is going to be very low because you have a very quick pulse, but there's very little variation between the beats. Whereas if you're not under sympathetic control and you're under parasympathetic control, you're able to adapt and overcome and rest and digest. You're going to have a lot of variation between your beats. Your HRV is going to be higher. So if you're sympathetically driven, your heart rate is under tightly knit controlled adrenaline or noradrenaline or your stress hormones, you're going to be beating very quickly with a low heart rate variability. And the more inflamed you are and the less flexible you are, the higher your glucose levels will be, right? And we get into, in other videos, talking to you and the people that I work with, is getting them to be metabolically flexible, eating in a time-restricted eating window, helping to support your autophagy. But that requires a lot of sophistication, and that's a whole other video. But anyways, glucose, when it's tightly controlled, you have a great baseline of low glucose levels throughout the day, and it's pretty stable, your glucose is going to be low. And if you're not under a lot of stress, or you are under a lot of stress, but you're dealing with it well, and you're able to get into parasympathetic rest and digest, your HRV is going to be high. So that number, HRV being high, parasympathetic, not stressed out, glucose being low, is going to be a big metabolic flexibility number. And that's things that we help people understand. 3 things I want you to think about that you should be looking into to get more insight about this is, number 1, your DNA. We do DNA tests on everyone. I think it's key. In fact, I get really upset when someone says to me, yeah, my doctor did my DNA and he told me I don't have MTHFR. I'm like, well, wait a minute, did they just run MTHFR? And they said, yeah, that's it. And well, there's up to 20,000 genes. And even when I run, thousands of genes, I still realize that there's still a lot that I don't know, but I know a lot more than one. And there's so many systems in the body, like mast cell activation, histamine, your NADH pathways, your sirtuin pathways, your biopterin pathways, your methylation, your acetylation, your glucuronidation. There's a lot of pathways, and I'm not saying those words to show off. I'm just showing you that there's a lot of puzzle pieces that you need to put together that you should at least look into if you are concerned about the virus, you don't have good metabolic flexibility and good reserve, and you're concerned about your allostatic overload. Obviously, identifying your stressors, that's key. So that can be just the obvious, like being out of work and the virus and finances and family and that kind of stuff. But some of the hidden ones can be heavy metals, mold, microbiome disruption, candida, yeast. Those are things that we like to investigate with looking under the hood. A lot of people will send me emails, hey, Dr. Rosen, can you tell me what supplements to use? That would be like, calling a mechanic and say, hey, can you fix my car? And not giving them any information. They need to look under the hood and take a diagnostic impression of what's going on with the car so that they can give you the best prognosis of what they're going to do to fix that vehicle. But you need to know the stressors. That's critical. And then the last thing we look at are tools. So we like to have tools. So I like to know your heart rate variability. I like to know your glucose. I like to know how to get you out of fight or flight. Once I know your DNA and your stressors, I know if there's iron overload, I like to give blood. If there are detox pathway issues or mold, we like to bind, and we like to take specific nutrients and do saunas to help eliminate these things. So those are tools that we need, but I can't get into them all right now because, again, I need to look under the hood. So just wanted to present this information to you because I see a lot of experts out there talking about the virus and talking about testing and talking about the strains and what the treatments are. And I'm talking about those that don't have the virus, that are concerned for their health, they're immunocompromised, and or they're just fatigued and tired, and they were before all of this, and they're certainly more even now, and they're looking for information, and the information is knowledge. And when you have these stress basics of how our stress system responds, it doesn't necessarily do the alarm, the resistance, the exhaustion phase. It's more of a cell danger thing where your body shifts its priorities. Your homeostasis is inborn. You cut your finger, it's going to heal whether you like it or not. And then allostasis is the way that you achieve that, and becoming metabolically flexible is super key. Looking into your DNA, looking into your stressors, having tools to be able to support you is really, really key. So if any of that made sense to you, listen, I want you to send me an email. I want you to put a like. I want you to make a comment. I want you to subscribe to my channel. But most importantly, for those that want support, want help, I work with people all over the world and help them customize a program based on their DNA, based on their genetics, based on their environmental trigger, and come up with tools to help give the user manual for you to get your energy back, your health back, your life back, and really start to feel great, and use this as a way to take notice that someone moved your cheese and it's time to get back your cheese because you have to work for that. So what I'll do is I'll put a link into the video feed wherever you're watching this as to how you can go about signing up for a no obligation talk with me. But I've been having people who haven't been showing up, number one. So don't sign up if you're not going to show up, because I booked that time and I feel that it's disrespectful if you don't show up. Number two is show up to get information, to do something about it. Be really decisive and really, unfortunately, at the end of your rope in terms of, I'm ready to fix this yesterday. And be resourceful. Do what it needs to get done to be able to do that. If you live in a different country, a different state, a different continent, and you're off work and you're concerned about finances, the bigger concern is what happens if you don't get this fixed when all of this is over and you're more tired and more burnt out. This is your opportunity to get your health back. And that's the great thing about crises, is when there's crises, there's always opportunity. And this is a great opportunity for you to get your health back. So once again, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Take care and have an awesome day.